Welcome back, Warriors, to another Battlefield 2042 video. I'm your commanding officer, Major Doodleman149, and in today's briefing, I'll be offering up some footage from my initial deployment to the battlefields of 2042. I'll be giving you my honest opinions and thoughts on how the operation is progressing, and how this initial deployment compares to Operation Open Beta. You may be surprised at this one, soldiers. So without wasting any more of your time, let's hop right into this, recruits. First things first, the good parts I noticed about this campaign. The graphical overhaul our HUDs have received is notable when compared to how things looked through our visors in Operation Open Beta. Colors are more vibrant, lines are less blurred, and it's fairly easy to note hostile soldiers when compared to friendlies, at least in the initial skirmish I was deployed to. The HUD knows the location of all friendlies and marks them, so basically, look for unmarked humans and you'll know it's a hostile. The hostile weather events brought on by heavy climate change certainly look clean and dangerous through my HUD. In my first deployment to Egypt, I encountered a tornado that essentially cut off access to both Alpha objectives. It feels like a nice random element added to the battlefield, and I look forward to seeing Mother Nature's impact on future confrontations. These next few items of note can only be described as mediocre. The AI that the brass has running through these clones of the field vary wildly in terms of their effectiveness. They are either the most brain-dead human shields or surprisingly skilled fighters, more often than not being friendlies and hostiles respectively. These clones also seem to favor the 12-gauge automatic, which is surprisingly effective at extreme ranges. Speaking of the 12-gauge automatic, the heft and accuracy of these weapons is a little lackluster. I'm unsure if the hostile clones are able to just take more hits because they aren't actual human combatants, or if the weapons we're using are just that cheaply made, but hostiles currently seem to be able to take a huge volume of fire before being terminated. The Scar M in particular felt incredibly underpowered for being an FN weapon. That being said, the semi-random shooting style that rewards shooting from a stationary position felt appropriate for this operation and reminded me of the conflict from 9 years ago. As a veteran of these conflicts, I greatly appreciated that. On another positive note with the weaponry, we appear to have access to a much larger set of attachments than what was available during Operation Open Beta, so I'm glad I'll get a chance to investigate those further. Specialists honestly play a minimal role when fighting clones. I'm certain I'll have more to say once real human flesh and blood enters the battlefield, but until then, the Specialists offer nothing of real importance or excitement to the moment-to-moment battles. These last 2 points are currently my only negatives that I could find with this operation. The briefing we are provided with on the backdrop of these conflicts is paper-thin at best. We're informed that massive ecological issues caused a large number of nations to go under, resulting in millions of refugees and soldiers known as no-pats, otherwise called the non-patrioted, because they don't fight for a nation. Curious, though, that these specialists fight for either the good old US of A or the Russians. Strange thing, that. My final point of note is the vehicles. While I didn't get into the cockpit of any aerial vehicles this first day, I did get behind the wheel of a Jeep and into the driver's seat of a tank. The Jeep felt awful to drive. The acceleration on this vehicle made it feel like it was made in 1942 and not 2042, and the floatiness of the handling was just terrible. I realize vehicles cannot stop on a dime, but I was also unaware that the sandy deserts of Egypt would all be covered in ice. That's the only way I can describe the feeling of driving this thing, like driving on an ice rink. The tank felt fine in my hands overall, I just don't like that there's no visual representation of landing an explosive hit on an enemy vehicle. Damage can eventually be seen on the enemy, but there is no notification in the HUD of a hit, despite the fact that I get feedback for every bullet that strikes an enemy. So, hopefully my quick overview of my initial impressions of this conflict were clear enough, recruits. I went very quickly through the good, bad, and the ugly, but I will be back at a later date with a more in-depth look at everything this operation has to offer. In summary, the visuals offered by our HUDs and the weather elements of battle are welcome improvements over Operation Open Beta. The clone AI, specialist, and gunplay were all a little lackluster or extremely inconsistent, while the reasoning behind this war and the vehicles we're supplied with both left me wanting. When vehicles are the weakest point of a battlefield, there is a distinct problem there. Overall, this half felt like a conflict from the past and half felt like the battles in Verdansk 2 years ago, and not in a good way. Squad cohesion is essentially non-existent, and the brass needs a new vehicle manufacturer. So that is all, soldiers. I've regaled you with my initial experiences on the battlefields of 2042 and have provided my opinions on said experiences. This operation certainly is a mixed bag at first, but despite that, I am still excited to continue taking the fight to the enemy. Hopefully this experience as a whole doesn't get tedious. If you've had a chance to deploy, what have you thought about this conflict? Let me know down below. And with that, if your CO did an adequate job today with this briefing, be sure to leave him a like and subscription to show command that he is worthy of more viewership from potential recruits. And with that, I've been your CO, Major Doodleman149, and until our next briefing, you are all dismissed!